Ladies and gentlemen, I think most of you would agree that people pay attention to the polls. Not every day, not everybody, and not all the time. But we are interested in other people's opinions of ourselves, and we are interested in other people's opinion of our cities. And you may have noticed in the past couple of weeks, there have been some opinion polls out on people's attitudes towards cities. Much of that work was done by Angus Reid at the request of the people who designed this conference, CityAge. And so here to reveal the full results of the polls is Andrew Grenville, who is the COO of Angus Reid. Andrew.
Thank you very much. The group earlier spoke a little bit towards the end about the importance of leadership and the importance of public opinion. And I think I have in what we'll see today some good news and some very disheartening news. But I think ultimately in the end, there is in this some information that gives me real cause for hope. The session that's coming up is about the municipal brand. And what is a brand? We think of sometimes as the brand being what the advertising tells us. But that's not really what a brand is. A brand is a collection of perceptions in people's minds. So what our citizens think is the current reality of our municipal brands. And our municipal brands can vary quite a bit and are quite important because they give us a sense of the future, of who we are, of where we're going. And that has tremendous impact as to whether we move forward in a positive way or whether we start to, in fact, slide backwards. So what we did was a survey of about 1,600 people. We did it just in 4 areas: Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary. Interesting collection of some of our larger urban areas. And basically we asked people about what they thought of the city in which they live. So as we go through this, the brand that you see portrayed for Calgary is coming from Calgarians. For Toronto, it's from Torontonians and so forth. So let's first look at the municipal brand image. And I want to go through 3 parts here. There's what do you think of your city? Then it's going to be, what do you think about your city's governments? And then it's going to be about what do you feel about the leadership of that city's government? Because those 3 things are very interconnected. So here we have a first question, which is how satisfied are you with the quality of life in your city? This is showing you the percent that are very or extremely satisfied. You can see there's a real difference between Toronto, say, and Calgary, and Montreal is very low. Here we see that it's really just over a quarter saying they are very or extremely satisfied. That means that 75% are either somewhat satisfied or really not satisfied at all. These are not encouraging numbers, but I do note or take encouragement from the fact that there is variation here, that we do see some cities much more optimistic, much happier, and we'll see this pattern kind of repeating throughout the presentation. So we did some modeling. We asked a series of attributes. Which attributes did you associate with your city, and how is your city doing a good job on these attributes or not? So we looked at that, and then we looked at overall quality of life, and we modeled the relationship between the two. So what I've represented here is the larger the word, the more important that phrase is, or the more important that attribute is. First one is on the rise, which is the most important. It's a sense of positive momentum, a sense of hope. But interestingly, the second largest, second most important one is embracing sustainability, which I think for the group that was on beforehand should be heartened by that as a populace, we do in fact really value that. And when a city does a good job on that, we feel better about the quality of life of our city. After that comes on top of a good infrastructure, good place to start a business, embracing innovation, and so forth. We'll just look at how the cities do on some of these attributes. On the rise, so that sense of positive, optimistic momentum. 9 out of 10 Calgarians say their city is on the rise, and whereas we've got 6 in 10 in Toronto, lower than Vancouver, but higher than Montreal, where sadly we've had riots in the streets recently. So not a good moment for Montreal. Embracing sustainability. Here, again, Vancouver is seen as being at the forefront. Calgary, with its resource-based economy, the Calgarians aren't as likely to describe their city that way. In Toronto, it's only half, and you can decide whether the glass is half empty or half full. This is, again, an interesting one, also important. Embraces innovation. In Toronto, unfortunately, only half the population believes that the city is doing that currently. So I think when we saw those low levels of quality of life, this is an important driver of that and explains part of it. Now, I'm also optimistic in saying that half the people do believe that Toronto is embracing innovation. On top of infrastructure needs is one where there's relatively low levels of satisfaction, where the percent of people who say that their city's on top of infrastructure needs is low. So 75%, roughly, of Torontonians don't think that the city's on top of its infrastructure needs. So while we tend to think of the population as reacting to very short-term things, this is a very long-term thing and is very much related to overall quality of life. And people get that. So if we can spread the word that infrastructure is important, perhaps we can see some positive momentum. We'll look at the municipal government image. Here, we start with who's doing a good job. What percent of the population say that their municipal government is doing a good job? Again, Calgary stands out with high numbers, 62. There's always people who aren't going to be appreciative of a government, and governments do make mistakes. But there's a very different situation in Toronto, where half that number say the government's doing a good job. And again, in Montreal, a very low 22%. Again, we looked at what are the attributes of a government that are the drivers of thinking that you're doing a good job. And so here we asked how is the city doing on these things? And depending upon whether you described it as, yes, they're doing a good job on it, or a poor job on it, it was very strongly linked to your overall perception of how well the government was doing. So the number one is enhancing quality of life. So if you think the government's doing a good job of enhancing quality of life, then you think they're doing a good job overall. If you think they're doing a poor job, you think they're doing a poor job overall. So this is about, what's it doing for me? Is it making my life better? Responding to citizens' needs and then being accountable. Those are the second largest ones. And those are interesting because we often think about there being an alienation and people being disinterested in the government. But being accountable and responding to citizens' needs are really all about conversation, about dialogue, about sharing information back and forth. And we'll see how that comes out here. Enhancing your quality of life. Again, Calgary far in the lead. Toronto and Montreal trailing behind, with Vancouver somewhat in the middle. Responding to citizens' needs. Again, this is one where a minority of people in all places except for Calgary think that the municipal government is doing a good job of that. So this responsiveness, and in this case also being accountable, is something clearly where there's an opportunity to really further this and to make it a better place. Giving citizens their say. Now, this is again one where we have a minority saying that that they're able to do this. So if we put that back with accountability and the other attributes around communication, we can see that this is a really central thing for people. People want to engage. People want to have dialogue. If we look finally at the mayoral image question, no, it's a good news story. These are the items that are the drivers of perception, attributes of the mayors that are driving a feeling of whether they're doing the government's doing a good job or a poor job. So, for example, if you think that being inefficient describes your mayor, you're very likely to say the government's doing a poor job. But if you think your mayor is very intelligent, then you're going to think that they're doing a good job, an honest, down to earth, in touch, out of touch, again, back to that communication issue, and weak. Inefficient. So this is a situation where we have just 10% of the Calgary population suggesting that their mayor is inefficient, whereas it's 4 in 10 in Toronto and over half in Montreal. Intelligent. Here we do see a fairly significant gulf. That is a statistically significant difference. Between just 12% in Toronto, only 15% in Montreal, 3/4 in Calgary, and half in Vancouver. So there's clearly a gulf here, and it's interesting, 74%, there's no way that 74% of the population of Calgary voted for that mayor, but there is widespread consensus that this is a bright guy. In touch. So again, back to this important issue of dialogue. Here we have depressingly low numbers in Toronto, barely existing numbers in Montreal, and even in Calgary, it's half the population. Clearly opportunity there. So if we look now just at Calgary's mayor's brand image, we see that he's perceived to be intelligent, open, down-to-earth, honest, and in touch. Those bigger words are the words that are more people use to describe him. Vancouver, here we have a mixed bag, so we see some large words that are negative, like arrogant, and large words that are positive, like intelligent. We have out of touch, down-to-earth, inefficient. So a mixed picture, a polarized picture, where the population have different and obviously strong perceptions of that mayor. We have a consensus, much more so in Montreal, where we have a mayor that is characterized as being inefficient, weak, out of touch, and to make it worse, boring. In Toronto, we have a fair bit of consensus, where we see the most common perceptions of the mayor are that he's arrogant, foolish, out of touch, inefficient, and uncaring. So, not a particularly positive image at this point in time. Just a few comments. Toronto, obviously, its brand has a significant problem amongst its citizens. This is important, I'd suggest, because for there to be optimism for us to pull together and to work together, we want to have a positive brand. We want to look at our city positively so that we can get that positive momentum, get that good movement going like we see in Calgary. Now, the thing that I take courage from out of this tapping into public opinion is the importance that people placed on innovation and on sustainability. Now, right now, Toronto has poor marks on both of those things. But those are two things that Torontonians would dearly love to see. So I think if we can bring that to the fore, it's good, and it's good fodder for opportunities to push both of those things. Toronto's government, obviously, and especially its mayor, are lagging far behind Calgary and Vancouver. I think it's nice to have those other cities to give us some context, because we all know that we're pretty cynical about politicians, but to see such a gulf there suggests that better things are possible. People want government that interacts with them openly, that has a dialogue with them, and that works to improve their quality of life. They want innovation. They want sustainability. What we need now in Toronto is for it to become an innovation city. Thank you.